From the definition of a human being to the tension between liberty and control of those beings, these concepts have deep roots in human history, manifesting in various forms as society evolves. This video proposes to explore how contemporary problems arising from artificial intelligence are in fact the latest iterations of long-standing societal challenges. What I mean by that is the many issues we see coming from AI, such as theft, what it means to think, all of these various things have actually come up throughout history in a very long series of events over the last 2,000 years. By analyzing the historical context of these issues, we can better understand how the problems associated with AI and other technologies stem not from the tools themselves, from the technologies, but from the people using them. As you look over our many definitions of rights and our history through that lens, it becomes increasingly clear that our societies are like old houses with good bones, but creaky floors. The inequalities and issues are part of the architecture. They just get a new wallpaper every few decades. Technological revolutions, rather than creating entirely new problems, often serve to highlight and amplify existing human concerns, bringing them back into the spotlight. As we delve into the world of artificial intelligence and digital technologies, it's essential to ask ourselves fundamental questions about what it means to be human, to have rights, to deal with the political ramifications of individual liberties and governmental powers. This video is exploring how these questions, when applied to our digital age, are drawing upon insights from various disciplines to shed light on the enduring nature of societal challenges and the importance of understanding their historical context. Now, first we have to dive into the cyclical nature of societal challenges. Technology serves as a medium through which age-old problems manifest themselves, taking on new forms and magnitudes in the digital age. Throughout history, we've seen numerous examples of how technological advancements have amplified and transformed societal challenges. The invention of the printing press, for instance, revolutionized the dissemination of information, but also gave rise to new forms of propaganda and censorship. The Industrial Revolution, much like the digital one, was marked by immense economic growth and innovations, but also by deep social strife, widening the chasm between the affluent and the impoverished, much akin to the current disparity seen in digital access and literacy. Each time these technological shifts are seen, a return to what it means to be human, to what it means to have rights, and finally, to have rights surrounding the very technologies that are bringing up these talking points. The tale of technological development is one of human ambition and flaw, of aspiration towards greatness, and the simultaneous propensity towards oversight and exploitation. This duality is vividly captured in the transition from manual labor to mechanization, which, while boosting productivity and economic growth, also led to the exploitive labor practices that needed significant social reform movements to rectify. This technological transition is also followed by a generational perspective shift. As one generation ages out, the new one comes in, immersed in a sea of change and knowledge far different from the past. A new set of ideals or perceptions on the same problems of rights who we are as humans begin to prop up. One of the most recent examples of this cycle can be seen in the distinction between digital natives and digital settlers. As Claudius in her 2018 paper explains, digital natives, those born only knowing a digital rather than analog world, are far more adept at functioning in a world dependent on digital technologies than those labeled digital settlers or people who are exposed to digital technologies later in life, i.e. generations of millennials and boomers versus current day Gen Xers and so on. Because of this immersion in a new world, the younger generation may see issues completely differently. They do not view technological innovations as separate from the makeup of their society, and thus do not separate the effects felt from them within our political fundamentals. Even the very social capital, the connectivity between generations, has transitioned into a new form, a new digital pathway of thought for the old social contract in the very capital of our social interaction. As Williams in his 2007 paper notes, the internet has been shown to encourage online social capital, but at the same time it displaces offline social capital. This result, however, varies with the type of social capital, increasing bridging social capital while decreasing bonding social capital. Social interaction and the capital it generates is shifting. creating an even greater divide between the generation experiencing the shift and the generations prior to it. This generational divide highlights the way in which digital technologies have fundamentally altered the fabric of our social interactions and behaviors, making us take a step back to understand what was important about these interactions to begin with. While looking at the statistics surrounding the actual effects is outside the scope of this video and my talks right now, the question of how many issues stemming from these shifts are due to technology, or how many are being highlighted again because we never truly solved them the first time around, comes to the forefront. John Stuart Mill, someone that many of you should be familiar with if you're diving into the political ideas of liberty, gave insights and focused on free speech and open debate in his writing on liberty. It reminds us that often without a fresh place to debate or a new era of conflict, teachers and learners go to sleep at their posts as soon as there is no enemy in the field, suggesting that vigilance and active engagement are necessary to prevent the decay of values, or at the very least, the end of debate on these values. The cyclical nature of power dynamics and the need for ongoing debate are as relevant today as they were in Mill times. The very arguments surrounding humanity, ethics, and what it means to be an intelligent being, or a being deserving of rights, have surfaced again because of these technological and generational shifts, and artificial intelligence is at the center of it. So this takes us to the idea of intelligent beings and what I mean when people are redefining what it means to be human. The advent of artificial intelligence challenges the very fabric of what we understand as intelligence, consciousness, and personhood. But before diving into the ramifications and connections of robot rights to the issue of human rights, I find it first important to understand the concept of robot thinking in the first place. Now, many people have arguments about the iteration or the abilities of artificial intelligence to actually reason or think, often saying that, well, they're just predicting the next word. And while there's plenty of evidence behind this fact, it makes an assumption of what reasoning is, what retrieval is, and what humans' consciousness and reasoning is to begin with. Many assumptions. First, I'd like to start with Elon Hunt Botting in her Artificial Life After Frankenstein. She provides a profound commentary on these concepts from both a scientific and political viewpoint. She states that the advent of AI not only questions but reshapes our definitions of life and moral worth like an uncanny echo of Mary Shelley's Frankenstein. This prompts a reconsideration of our ethical landscapes, urging us to look beyond the flesh and blood to acknowledge consciousness in diverse forms. In one of her most basic standpoints, she explains that computerized technology has the uncanny ability to take on a life of its own by working independently of its designers and programmers. Botting's observation here isn't mainly a statement about autonomy. It's a reflection that she connects to Mary Shelley's writing on the essence of creation itself. In the same way that Victor Frankenstein's creature ventured beyond his own creator's intention, AI systems today can operate with a level of independence that sometimes bewilders even their creators to imitate thinking at its most fundamental level, or what we think. Again, I'm sure plenty of you are listening to this and have arguments, but please bear with me. I promise I try to approach all of them. Specifically with the argument and debate of machines thinking. It actually started well before Mary Shelley came into the world. Descending into the historical roots nearly 200 years before her, René Descartes, in his Discourse on the Method, offers an early perspective on machine cognition through the lens of language as a marker of thought. Now, he was a very strong opponent of them being able to think, but he explained that the appropriate use of language could be a definitive test for genuine thought in machines. To be able to explain the difference of machine language and human, he says, "And we ought not to confound speech with the natural movements which indicate the passions, and can be intimidated by machines as well as manifested by animals. Nor must it be thought, with the certain of the ancients, that the brutes speak, although we do not understand their language." Descartes attempts to explain the distinction of brutes, machines, versus man, thinking, through the analogy of a clock as well. A clock is adept at measuring time. He explains that the excellence of machines in a specific function is a result of their mechanical configuration, not an indication of cognitive abilities. Quote, "So that the circumstances that they do better than we does not prove that they are endowed with mind. It rather proves that they are destitute of reason, and that it is nature which acts in them according to the disposition of their organs. The problem that I personally have with this is that this line of thought was being applied to slaves, brutes, or even animals has already been contested greatly over the last 200 years by many scholars. However, it took some time for someone to contest it specifically in relation to machines. Now, if you're in the world of artificial intelligence and the history of it, the name Alan Turing, I'm sure, comes to mind. The brilliant mind that used algorithms and rudimentary computers to break the Nazis' cryptographic system known as Enigma. He took a stab at the philosophical concept in the 1950s of machines thinking. He believed that machines could have the ability to think much in the same way we do, or at the very least, their own way. Turing's main argument about machines being able to think hinges on the idea that the perception of originality in human thought could itself be an illusion. Referencing a wonderful quote that you find both in Ecclesiastes in the Bible as well as under Socrates' writing, there is nothing new under the sun. He suggests that what we consider original work might simply be an extension or a transformation of ideas implanted in us through education and experience. Turing implies that if human originality can be viewed as reshaping of existing knowledge and principles, as in there is no such thing as first principle logic, then the ability of machines to surprise us or create something new should not be summarily dismissed. We are taught language, math, concepts, ideologies, school, and society in this way is the program, and our brains are the machines. By explaining this, Turing, and I would argue myself, are trying to shift the focus from the limitations of machines to the limitations of human understanding and observation of these machines. He explains that the advancements in technology reveal capacities in machines that were previously unimagined or unrecognized. If human thought is largely a recombination and refinement and retrieval of pre-existing ideas, the distinction between human and machine intelligence becomes much less clear. Turing's insight challenges us to reconsider what constitutes thinking, and whether the capacity for original thought is a definitive characteristic of human intelligence, or if it can be emergent property in sufficiently advanced machines. Turing continues to challenge the notion of mechanical incapacity for originality by proposing the potential of machines to simulate any human behavior, including creative processes, in ways that are almost indistinguishable from natural human actions, due to their capacity for unexpected outputs. He explains that many arguments that discount the surprise elicited by machine responses all share a common fallacy. And I've read many papers over the last few years now, many talks, many YouTube videos. I believe many researchers, philosophers, mathematicians are all falling to this very fallacy. The view that machines cannot give rise to surprise is due, I believe, to a fallacy to which philosophers and mathematicians are particularly subject. This is the assumption that as soon as a fact is presented to a mind, all consequences of that fact spring into the mind simultaneously with it. Now, this is not an argument that everyone's falling to this, but I do notice this concept and this fundamental fallacy there. Turing's assertion implies that the element of surprise can emerge even when all the facts are pre-programmed, as the unfolding of these facts might lead to unforeseen outcomes. This prospect applies equally to machines, thereby diminishing the distinction between human and machine cognition. It suggests that the significance lies not in how the machine operates, but in the unforeseen actions it takes. Actions that were not explicitly programmed or anticipated. Continuing this line of thought articulated by Turing, the black box problem in contemporary machine learning and large language models serves as a compelling case to support both Botting's and Turing's statements about machines acting in surprising ways. This black box problem pertains to the often opaque internal workings of complex algorithms, where even the creators may not fully understand how specific outputs are generated. In machine learning, particularly deep learning systems, the neural networks process vast amounts of data through layers of algorithms, making decisions and predictions that are not always transparent, even to the programmers. The outcomes, while based on the data fed into the system and the training of the system, can be unexpected or surprising, and finding the actual algorithms or the thought process or the connections on why that program came up with that specific output is actually almost impossible. mirroring Turing's notion of unforeseen consequences arising from known facts. Now, again, I say almost impossible. There's obviously many measuring techniques and metrics that we can use to create connections, but at the same time, most of those are reliant on another language model reading that language model, which to me is just more of a reason to dive into this concept. In certain instances, artificial intelligence has demonstrated the ability to create novel artistic works or solve complex problems in ways that were not explicitly programmed and not entirely understood by its developers. Check out a couple of these articles here, specifically one on functions, where it solved a previously never solved function. It didn't learn the solution, it found the solution. Moreover, the advancements of large language models, like OpenAI's GPT models, further exemplifies this concept. These models trained on extensive textual databases and now visual and multimodal sources often generate responses or content that can be startlingly creative or insightful. While the underlying principles of these models, what makes them up, are understood, they predict the likelihood of the next word or phrase based on the previous contexts and weights associated with the words. The specific pathways to their sometimes ingenious outputs remain largely mysterious. This can be likened to the way in which human thought is conducted. It's the process of deciding what is best to say next in reference to what is heard, what we know, and how we think we should be saying anything different. In this way, the black box problem in modern artificial intelligence is not just a technical challenge. It underscores the notion that the capacity for generating new ideas or solutions may not solely be a human domain, and that machines, though complex and often opaque processes, can be novel and come to unexpected results. This leads us to an interesting paradox. If the criticisms leveled against machines for their inability to think can also be applied to humans, then the question isn't solely whether machines can think, but whether humans can truly claim exclusivity over thought. Descartes' famous assertion, "I think, therefore I am," presupposes an inherent self-awareness in thinking. However, when a machine states, "I think," or shows the actions of thinking, the authenticity of its claim to self-awareness and understanding becomes a subject of debate. If this still seems far-fetched, think about the many times in history a society or a race has questioned the rights and abilities of another only to conclude confidently through science that the other should not have rights, cannot think at the higher level, is incapable of being some sort of quality. While it is certainly outside of the scope of this video to give sufficient evidence that machines can and do think, the question of what gives us the authority to decide what is thinking and what isn't is actually the better argument to focus on here. And with authority comes the question of the rights of those subject to that authority. So let's dive into the struggle for rights in the digital age. With this shift in authority, or at least this concept of it, it cannot be denied that artificial intelligence is making us again look at who we are, what rights are in the modern digital age and post-digital age. Much in the same way that past debates on civil rights, slavery, rights of animals, and more have all been argued upon in many past generations and technological shifts. David Gunkel, in his book Robot Rights, makes notes of the perspective and highlights this in the perfect statement: human history is the history of exclusion and power. Humans have defined numerous groups as less than human: slaves, women, the other races, children, foreigners. These are the wretched who have been defined as stateless, personless, as suspect, as rightless. This is the present realm of robot rights. I'm bringing this up for an important reason, to get us into the mind state. I'm not going to sit here and expect you to accept the idea that robots have rights or they should or anything like that, but rather look at the fundamental philosophical questions that asking if robots should have rights creates. The linkage between past injustices and current debates on artificial intelligence not only contextualizes our technological dilemmas, but also challenges us to consider the broader implications of our ethical and societal decisions. The legal and ethical standing of robots is further complicated by questions about their capacity to hold rights traditionally reserved for humans. Gunkel probes this issue by asking, are robots capable of being holders of rights? Or more specifically, are robots capable of having one or more of the Hofeldian incidents, namely privileges, claims, powers, and immunities? This inquiry into Hofeldian legal theory offers a structured framework to critically evaluate the potential for AI to possess legal rights, encouraging a reassessment of our notions of personhood and legal status in the wake of AI societal integration, which of course makes us look at how we are giving these rights to ourselves in the first place as just humans. Also, a side note, if you haven't or do not know what Hofeldian legal theory is, I put a link in the bio, but I definitely recommend diving into it, or even better, checking out that section in Dr. Gunkel's book, because it is an interesting analytical and mathematical philosophy viewpoint to be able to take. What do we really hold as self-evident if the idea of what it means to be a being is now coming into question, a thinking being? Moreover, the societal perception of artificial intelligence and its rights significantly hinges on the collective will and ethical considerations that guide our technological advancements. Even Dr. Gunkel suggests a future scenario where the societal development of artificial intelligence could lead to extremely significant ethical debates, which I would argue we are seeing today and will continue to see grow over the next 5 to 10 years. He says, if artificial intelligence is achieved and widely deployed, or at the very least can reproduce and improve themselves, calls may be made for human rights to be extended to robots. This perspective highlights the dynamic nature of societal norms and ethics in adapting into new technology, realities where the capabilities of AI may necessitate a reevaluation of the rights extended to them or around them. Again, my argument here isn't to conclusively affirm or dispute whether AI can achieve consciousness. Instead, I emphasize that from a governance standpoint, an unequivocal answer might be unnecessary. The pivotal issue is the populace's perception, especially within a democracy. When a notable segment or even a majority believe in the sentient nature or rights of robots, then governance, especially within a democratic framework, will be compelled to confront the topic of robot rights. Something similar has already occurred among the viewpoints of whales and dolphins. Recognizing the complex cognition of social structures of Cartesians, the Declaration of Rights for Cartesians emphasized their status as non-human persons. Such acknowledgement has already led to tangible policy shifts, as seen in India's decision to ban dolphins from aquatic zoos, viewing their captivity as a form of actual enslavement. These developments underline the growing global discourse and concrete actions surrounding the rights of personhood of dolphins and orcas, and protests advocating animal rights have escalated to the formation of radical factions deemed eco-terrorists, which have certainly affected corporations and governments alike. That's why I argue it would seem reasonable, given the trajectory, to predict that similar ideologies and groups will surface in the post-digital era, surrounding the ever more human-like robots we surround ourselves with. The legal framework for non-human entities, such as corporations, already accommodates concepts of personhood that could potentially be adapted for AI in the short term. Quote, a vast body of law already exists for attributing legal personhood to non-human entities, corporations. Giving legal rights, if not moral, is not that far-fetched when you're looking at artificial intelligence. We already give entity, personhood, legal standing in the eyes of the government to C Corps or LLCs. Now, granted, this is from a protectionist advent, but it still is a thing. You are taxed as an individual, taxed as a separate. So doing that for maybe an extension artificial intelligence of yourself, artificial intelligence that is making money beyond you, could be taxed separately from you, right? There's a large line of thought to go from here that's definitely out of the scope of this paper right now, but even if we do extend beyond economic rights and into human moral rights, it may be better to be more progressive in this idea from a moral perspective. Dr. Gunkel notes again, there is little moral fault in being overly generous and extending rights to machines which are not autonomous. There's a huge moral fault in being overly conservative about granting them moral standing and finding out that they are autonomous in thinking. Now, I know someone's listening to this and be like, well, what if a corporation uses those moral rights to exploit people for hurting or destroying the property of that company as a person? And now you're using the kind of loophole of robot rights to then sue or control the property of other people, as we've seen with cars and digital assets. Completely reasonable. But if we focus on the aspect of AI as being something fearful, this creates a problem in itself. Something that I am a very fond researcher of. Rene Girard speaks on this aspect of scapegoat mechanisms, or mimesis. Scapegoat continues to be a historical process of humanity's fixation on the mechanism of blaming others. Botting actually warns against the potential harms of viewing AI as only an adversarial force in this context. Quote, to turn AI into the enemy is to reinforce the distortive and destructive psychology of humanity's mental severing from the material world around us. This dualistic perspective produces the image of dead or thoroughly instrumentalized matter that feeds human hubris and our earth-destroying fantasies of conquest and consumption. This is a problem humanity has faced time and time again in its history, and it just happens to be that AI is at the forefront this time. AI is the scapegoat for the very real evil that humans will and do commit. Reflecting on the human-like qualities of artificial intelligence, Botting also offers a reminder that AI is made in the flawed yet powerful image of humanity. We are all artificial intelligence, educated through the input of stories and other experiences. This analogy not only humanizes AI, but also underscores the inherent imperfections that are potentially embedded within these technologies, mirroring human strengths and weaknesses, as well as touching on the many questions around the idea of post-human or transhuman. This, however, is also a double-edged sword. With this entire system, if it is based on our weakness, will AI simply continue the cycle of power and protest as humans have seemingly created through our entire journey of society? So what is this eternal cycle of power and protest? The continuous interaction between technology and social structures forms an intricate dance of innovation and regulation. Nick Bostrom's writing become increasingly relevant specifically in this regard. Although criticized heavily by both Botting and many other current-day thinkers, Bostrom's insight at their core do shed light on the complex dynamics of power that AI introduced into our modern society, even if indirectly. In his book Superintelligence, he highlights the main concerns and issues that stem from the abilities of AI, suggesting that an agent's, artificial intelligence, ability to shape humanity's future depends not only on the absolute magnitude of the agent's own faculties and resources, but also on the relative magnitude of its capabilities compared with those of other agents with conflicting goals. What is interesting here is the fact that this same issue Bostrom is highlighting about an AI agent is the same limiting inequality faced by all humans within our current system. The perspective illuminates the broader implications of power dynamics within the digital age, highlighting how the interplay between human and AI-driven processes will necessitate a recalibration of existing power structures, and more importantly, how the same fundamentals that limit AI are the same ones that limit us in many ways. Bostrom also raises critical ethical considerations regarding the onset of superintelligent AI and the existential risk it poses. He warns of the dangers. If an agent is not already fundamentally friendly by the time it gains the ability to reflect on its own agency, it will not take kindly to a belated attempt at brainwashing or a plot to replace it with a different agent that better loves its neighbor. Now take a second. Initially on reading this statement, we see that AI systems need to be developed with intrinsic ethical considerations that align with human values from the outset, rather than attempting to instill these values retrospectively. But this highlights something far more profound and I would argue much more problematic. Bostrom most likely did not write this with this intention, but again, the statement on brainwashing can be applied to our own human biases and issues. The systems we grow in, the laws we learn, and the structures that support us become a part of our being, of our entire thought process. A person's views on gender, sexuality, religion, politics, and so on are all concepts that could dictate if a person will be a friendly neighbor, and more often than not, attempts to change those ways of thinking, some could say brainwashing depending on where you stand, are met with hostility. And sometimes that's reasonable hostility, other times it's extreme. This highlights a major logical fallacy that is present in the very training of these artificial intelligence. Who is deciding what is morally right for the AI to learn? What does it really mean to be a good neighbor? What is morally right? Again, we go back to the initial statement that I made in the very first paragraph of this entire video. These are questions society has been asking itself for millennia. And with every major technological or political shift, we find ourselves asking these very same questions. Yet even in this, we find another question. Should we have the authority in the first place to control what this AI learns if they are given rights? Should we have the control over people and educational systems and what their morals are to begin with as a government, as a society? What could happen if AI are given control over rights, over education? The control and governance of artificial intelligence reflect deeper concerns about the balance of power between human institution and the autonomous capabilities of artificial intelligence. Bostrom suggests a future where artificial intelligence could potentially recalibrate its objectives autonomously, without human input, emphasizing the need for robust technical safeguards and a philosophical rethinking of our relationships with technology, and a deep understanding of the transformations this would cause. However, this continues the assumption that those in power must remain in power. The systems, the structures, the morals, and standards should not be changed. Is this a fallacy or a fundamental? This is traditional political conservatives versus political progressivism. The cycle of power and protest inherent in these transformations underscores an eternal challenge of governance, aligning technological capabilities with ethical imperatives and societal needs. The nuances of these questions stem not from the technology of itself, but the humans using them, and the shared history of debate surrounding our very rights as humans. Now, as much as I would love to dive into all of this deeper, and trust me, I have enough writings for us to do that, I'd like to come into a conclusion here. In this exploration on the cyclical nature of societal challenges, amplified by digital technologies and artificial intelligence, we've traversed historical precedents, ethical quandaries, and philosophical debates, revealing enduring human behaviors and dilemmas in the face of new technological horizon. Our discussions, inspired by thinkers like David Gunkel, Elon Hunt Botting, Nick Bostrom, have shed light on the intricate dynamics between technology and society, highlighting both the potential and the pitfalls of our increasingly digital world. Dr. Gunkel's reflections on the history of exclusion and human rights and his discourse provide a critical framework for understanding the contemporary debates surrounding artificial intelligence and robotics. His insights challenge us to consider whether we will repeat the patterns of exclusion that have marred our history, or whether we can chart a more inclusive and equitable course into the digital age. This inquiry into AI rights does not merely concern the legal and ethical status of non-human entities, but also mirrors the broader societal reflections on inclusion, personhood, moral worth, morals in general. Elon Hunt Botting's perspective on our dualistic view of technology, as either a detached tool or an adversarial other, urges a reevaluation of how we integrate artificial intelligence into our societal fabric. This reconceptualization is crucial, affecting not only how we utilize AI in our daily lives and governance structures, but also how we can avoid past technological missteps that fueled human hubris and destructive conquests. Additionally, Nick Bostrom's examination of AI influence on power dynamics and human autonomy raises significant ethical considerations. His cautions about the development of superintelligent AI underscores the necessity for ethical foresight from the outset of AI development, as well as the importance of maintaining rigorous oversight of these technologies. These reflections add a critical dimension to these discussions, highlighting a significant fallacy in the training of AI systems. Is it right to question the basis of moral judgments in AI training, asking who is deciding what is morally right for the AI to learn, which goes into the actual question, can anyone decide what is morally right? Can you tell me what it means to be a good person and then tell the AI that? These are not new inquiries, but are ancient societal questions that resurface with each major technological and political shift, now simply viewed through the lens of artificial intelligence. This perspective underscores the complexity of embedding ethical norms in artificial intelligence. This perspective underscores the complexity of embedding ethical norms in AI, as these technologies are likely to reflect, for better or worse, the diverse and often conflicting human values of their creators. This discourse is essential for not only navigating the ethical landscapes that artificial intelligence and digital technologies present, but also for ensuring that these technologies will enhance human capabilities and address societal challenges while simultaneously asking us what it truly means to be human in the first place. The integration of AI into our lives is a reflection of our own values and imperfections. And while the technologies themselves may be new, the problems they bring are as ancient as us. I would like to end on a quote straight from Mary Shelley's Frankenstein. This is actually the monster speaking. The modern masters promise very little. They know that metals cannot be transmuted and that the elixirs of life is a chimera. But these philosophers, whose hands seem only made to dabble in dirt, and their eyes to pore over the microscope or crucible, have indeed performed miracles. They penetrate into the recesses of nature and show how she works in her hiding places. They ascend into the heavens. They have discovered how the blood circulates and the nature of the air we breathe. They have acquired new and almost unlimited powers. They can command the thunders of heaven, mimic the earthquakes, and even mock the invisible world with its own shadows. Till next time, my friends, keep reading.